sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. We have a liftoff. Liftoff on Apollo 11.
Hello and welcome to PCKC TV. I'm your host, John Kreisbergs. Thrilled to be coming with you this evening, this Friday night. And we have some fun planned for this inaugural broadcast. I'm not going to do a lot of introduction here because I think the person that we're going to be bringing in for this first broadcast doesn't need a lot of introduction, but I know he's going to be really good at introducing himself anyway. So I'd like to introduce everybody to Mr. Christopher Jackson, founder, president, CEO, Grand Poobah of Planet Comicon Kansas City. Chris, welcome.
Greetings. Good to see you tonight, John.
So it's this is a little different, right? This is a little unusual for you, right?
Well, this is the first time I've done a live stream, so everybody's gonna have to roll with it. So we'll be fine.
It is a different sort of a deal, but I think one of the cool things, we've been talking about this for a couple of weeks now, and I think you guys have been working on a lot of stuff over the last few weeks. Obviously, there's been a couple of things going on here and there. But this is one of the things that kind of came out of the discussions around what Planet Comicon Kansas City could be doing during this time. Do you want to talk a little bit about just the conversation that was around that and what the team was talking about?
Basically, we were all disappointed when Planet had to be postponed from March. And that's everybody. That's the staff, the volunteers, the fans, the guests, the creators, the cosplayers. Everybody was disappointed. So during this quarantine time, our staff got together, including John and many others, and tried to think of what we could do to provide some content for our fans during this downtime.
Right.
And we've come up with a few ideas that we're going to be providing some live streams on a regular basis. And another thing that we really want to do is this quarantine and this cancellation and postponement of so many shows around the country has really created a stress on many of our exhibitors who rely on sales at conventions for their livelihoods. And we're trying to come up with ways to help drive some sales to our exhibitors. So one of the things we're going to be doing is highlighting some exhibitors during every broadcast. We're going to be highlighting exhibitors and artists and creators on our Facebook page and Instagram feeds and Twitter on a regular basis. And we're going to try to drive some business towards them so they can help get through this difficult time. So that's one of our focuses. And at the moment, we're still working on getting some formatting done. But if you go to our website and go to the exhibitor tab on the navigation bar and do the drop-down menu, you'll find an exhibitor list, an artist alley list, and a crafter list. And it alphabetically lists every exhibitor that was going to be at Planet Comicon.
So planetcomicon.com, look for that exhibitors link and get down there and you can get to that information. Yeah. That's great. That's great.
We really want to drive fans to those exhibitors who they would have met at Planet Comicon Kansas City.
Right.
So that's one of the goals of this whole operation.
So, it's a strange time. I think it's been a little bit more even a reveal for some of the fans who maybe have only been to Comic-Con a few times. I mean, I know we also have some diehard fans out there too, but not everybody understands what happens behind the scenes. Not everybody understands how much work it takes. And oddly enough, while there are folks who know you, Chris, there's a lot of folks who don't know you. And last year was a big 20th anniversary of the show. It's been a long journey, but it's been an interesting one, right?
Oh yes. Well, a little history of the show. I mean, last year was the 20th anniversary. My first show was in March of 1999. Many of you may know William Bindrup of Elite Comics. Somewhere in 1998, William and I decided that we wanted to bring an event to Kansas City that would provide a venue for fans to meet creators and celebrities. And to shop for their favorite collectibles, basically a nice venue for fandom. And we did that. William and I worked together to bring it together the first show was in late March 1999.
And you guys knew exactly what you had to do, and you had it nailed that very first go around, right?
Right from the start, we were perfection personified. Yeah. Yeah, not so much. We've learned a lot along the way. I learned a lot along the way.
How big was it? How big was your group, your crew that you would pull together to help you do that one?
Wow, the first crew was basically members of my family and a few friends, plus people that William had from his elite comics entourage that
Right.
put the show on. There were maybe 2 to 3 dozen of us. Basically, the show was put together by William and I almost exclusively up until a couple weeks before the show, and then we brought in more. We had no idea what to do for promotion. We had no idea about dealing with decorators and all of that.
And the doors open, and how many people walk through for that first show?
That first show, as I recall, we had around 1,200 people, maybe 1,500. I don't have good record for that.
That's not a small show, man. That's a pretty good showing.
Well, this was back in the old days over at the Overland Park International Trade Center, and we originally started in a room that I believe was 20, maybe 40,000 square feet, but I believe 20,000.
Mm-hmm.
And so the first few years we were in that room, and it was fairly busy. We actually felt the first show went very well. My first guest, celebrity guest, was Kenny Baker, R2D2 from Star Wars,
right?
And he was a great guy. I enjoyed Kenny a lot. He returned again in 2007 or 2008, and he was really a pleasure to work with. He was a great first guest.
And so even with those first shows, you knew that you were going to be doing what you wanted to do with the comics, but you also had to be balancing things out and drawing in a larger audience.
Well, my goal was to bring both celebrities and comic creators in. My background is in comics. I've been collecting comic books since the early to mid 1960s.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, I've got a few of the ones that I bought, a few comics I bought way back when with me here tonight for our show and tell later.
Right on.
But I was collecting comic books way back in the 1960s. And then at some point I outgrew comics, and then I grew back into them. So I went off to college, and somewhere during college or law school, I started collecting comics again. I remember one of my first conventions was Chicago Comic-Con in downtown Chicago in 1979.
Yeah.
And I remember that I bought an Amazing Fantasy 15 from Sparkle City Comics at that show. I sure wish I still had it. But
how much money did you drop for that?
I spent $500.
Ooh, so it's
$500, and it was a decent mid-grade copy.
Right.
It'd probably be a $50,000-$60,000 copy today.
Wow.
Neither here nor there. So that was my first convention way back when. But yeah, and I got back into collecting, and then around 1987, I started dealing in comics.
Mm-hmm.
And I was an exhibitor at shows around the country for a long time, a couple decades. And that gives me kind of a unique perspective, because there are just not very many comic convention promoters who have a background as first a collector and truly a collector,
right,
and then as an exhibitor. So I bring that to Planet, and one thing that's always been very important to me is that we keep a nice mix of comic creators and celebrities. So many shows have gone a direction of being solely celebrity driven. And I understand that. There are reasons for that.
Sure.
But it's been very important to me to not have the celebrities overtake the rest of the show. And I've been pretty successful in that. I'm known for having one of the better comic creator guest lists in the country for my shows.
So we're going to talk about comic creators specifically, maybe a little bit later. We're going to be talking about some other artists and stuff like that. But let's talk about a couple of our friends here too. These are folks that were scheduled to be with us in March. I think a good number of them, if not all of them, and you'd have to tell me for sure, are scheduled to be with us in August.
Sure.
This is part of the thing. This is part of what we want to accomplish here, is to be promoting and helping folks out in this time. So we got a handful of
what we have here is on the first card is basically some comic book retailers who deal in a mix of comics, but they really focus a lot on Golden and Silver Age comics.
Yeah.
And I actually know each of these people pretty well. Andy McMahon at Duncanville Books down in Texas. Lauren Becker, who's been with me for years, out of Comic Pop Collectibles. He's out of Michigan. Krypton Comics, Dean Phillips has supported the show for many years. Drew Stewart out of Columbia, Missouri with Como Comic Books. And Ron Crum out of Memphis. These are all dealers that have supported us for years. And this isn't to mean these are the only ones. We're just going to highlight a few every every show, every one of our streams.
That's awesome.
And I think we plan to put these up somewhere on Facebook so people can go see these cards a little later. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Good.
You know, it's a tough time for everybody right now. And I know a lot of folks are getting very creative about how they're doing their businesses these days. And but it's still one of those things that, you know, we've always been saying this, and it feels like we've been saying this for years to support your local comic store. But now it seems like we have to double down on that these days. So that's really cool though, that we have the opportunity to talk a little bit about them. So Chris, we were talking before we got started here, and it's really cool because not only do I get to talk comics with you, but I know that you also have the opportunity to probably even reach around in the directions of your home there and pull things off the shelves. Since you are such a big comic enthusiast, what are some of your favorite comic book arcs of over the years?
Oh, this could go on a while. We'll go back to my main character is Amazing Spider-Man.
Right.
I've still got many of the Amazing Spider-Mans that I bought off the shelves back in the 1960s. And just by happy coincidence, solely by coincidence, I have a few right here. So now these are books that I literally bought off the stands myself for 12 cents. This book right here, many will recognize it, Amazing Spider-Man number 50.
Yep.
John Romita Sr. cover. It's probably one of the most famous covers in Marvel Comics.
I just had a curiosity. What's the cover price? I always love asking.
The cover price is 12 cents.
12 cents. Oh,
and I guarantee I paid 12 cents for this book. Now, I've been very fortunate over the years at many shows that I've gone to meet many creators. And I was fortunate to get John Romita Sr. to sign this for me at San Diego maybe 10, 12 years ago. And then in 2016, I was fortunate enough to get Stan Lee to also sign it. So this book is signed by Stan and John Romita Sr.
All right.
This is one of the most classic books in Marvel, in Spider-Man fandom.
So I got an interesting question here from the Facebook feed, and I'd see if you'd be willing to answer this to whatever degree you feel comfortable.
Sure, go ahead.
What comic book was your best investment?
Wow, I've never been a really big investor in comics. I'm a reader. Yeah. I don't really buy the books that CGC slabbing of books and CBCS slabbing has a definite place in the industry, but that's not really what I focus on. Mm-hmm. The best investment would have been my Amazing Fantasy 15 had I kept it. I would have bought it for myself, and just by happy coincidence, it would have gone up vastly in value.
Yeah.
But I do have, gosh, that's a really tough one. I have X-Men #1 and Fantastic Four #1 and Strange Tales of Suspense 39, the first Iron Man, and Tales to Astonish, Tales of Journey into Mystery 83, the first Thor.
Yeah.
Tales to Astonish 27. So I've got all those books that I bought for me. And all of them are, in a sense, a good investment because they've all gone far up in value. I also never collected for condition, though. I was always perfectly happy to have a good or a VG or a fine. And because I enjoy having hands-on. I don't want to
have the comics. You just want.
I don't want to be scared to pick it up to read it.
Yeah.
And so I had never bought for condition. And so in that sense, my collection is not as valuable as it would have been had I been very selective over the years in buying high-grade books. As an example, I've been going to shows for years. As an example of that, my first San Diego Comic-Con was in 1987. Mm-hmm. And since then, I've been to San Diego Comic-Con 27 times. And I've always bought some comic books there, but I've never bought comic books for investment. Mm-hmm. Any of my keys were the good investments.
No, it's tough because it's almost like trying to, it's picking kids. I mean, some of these things are things that you chase because you just want to have them. Let me ask you this, and this is, and maybe I already know the answer to it, but have you ever sat with looking at a comic reader, looking at an iPad or any other reader, and be able to consume comics and feel satisfied in that sense?
I don't do much online reading of comics. No, I think I could, but I haven't had to do that yet because I've got so many books I want to read that are sitting here in my collection. I just pull one out and read it. And I love the physical feel of a comic.
Yeah.
And to sit with it and just read it. As an example of what I enjoy reading, I was going to show this. This is Amazing Spider-Man Annual #1, the first Sinister Six. This came out in around 1964, maybe?
Yeah.
And it's really early appearances of all these villains, Electro, Dr. Octopus, Vulture, all those. But this is coverless.
Yeah.
So it has very little value.
Right.
But I love this book because I can sit and open it up and flip through.
That's awesome.
And I love that.
So Tracy, that was an awesome question, and I think we'll be taking some questions along the way. We do have some folks that just to kind of a couple other questions. I also want to make sure we get to with Chris here. So it's cool. I love this. Hey, Alex, thank you so much for thanks for doing this. This means a lot. Hey, we're just trying to have fun here. We're trying to keep people engaged. So thank you for tuning in. For sure.
Thank everyone for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it. We want to continue doing this on a very regular basis, and we'll be putting out a schedule pretty soon. And this is the inaugural. We're going to see how it goes.
So, Chris, let's go back. I want to go back into your collection here. Show me something unusual that people would go, you collect what?
Gee, I wonder what you could be referring to that we talked about earlier. I have no idea. Let's see what I can find that's unusual in my collection. Let's see. I really enjoy. I got to find the other one here. Yeah. Here we go. I really enjoy collecting the girl comics from the 1940s and 50s. Yeah. This is an example. Let's take it out of the bag so it shines better. Millie the Model number 5 from 1947.
Millie the Model.
Millie the Model number 5, 1947.
Wow.
I love the art. The stories are absolutely silly, but they're fun. And I just really enjoy them.
Well, it's a classic line art style. I mean, it's almost like I think when you showed me that, and spoiler alert, you showed me that before. It's almost like a tattoo style. Kind of pinup, kind of a. Yeah. It's really kind of cool. It's funny that we look at a lot of the stuff like DC Bombshells and a lot of things that are coming out these days, and we're going to go, oh, that's so cool, that's so new and stuff like that. It's like, well, it's been a language that's been part of the comics for a while.
I was going to show you a couple other titles here.
Yeah,
Tessie the Typist. I don't know how well you can see these things. Tessie's a great one. It didn't last long. It's only about 36, 38 issues. I forget.
Yeah.
Now, when I've been collecting these titles for years, and for many years, back in 2000, you could find these things in dollar bins, $5 bins occasionally. Not very often because people hardly bothered to bring them.
Right.
But the last few years, these kind of books have just gone up in value. It's made it much harder to continue collecting them because people want a lot of money. Nellie the Nurse.
Mm-hmm.
Nellie the Nurse, and they're commenting on how the doctor says, "Wow, we usually don't have that big a crowd at one of these." Well, they're all there for Nellie, of course.
Of course, and Nellie's very stylish. Oh wait, let's see the skirt and all that. What's the advertisement on the back? Show me the advertisement.
Okay. Oh yes.
Right
there we go.
Moon Glow. What is Moon Glow?
Oh, let's find out what that is. I haven't looked. You'll look like Cinderella in her gayest moment in this dramatic dress. For $6.98, ladies, you can have this dramatic dress. $6.98, and you'll look your gayest.
Moon Glow. Love it.
There are some awesome ads in all these. My favorite ads go back. I should try to, for another broadcast sometime, I'll find some. They advertised like there was a tank, a fort, a submarine. For like $2.98 or $5.98, you could buy these things. I never bought one. I've never seen one.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming they're like cardboard stand-ups, but I've never seen them, and I love those ads. The other ads that are really famous are buy 100 soldiers for 99 cents or $1.
Mm-hmm.
And there's Roman soldiers and Civil War soldiers and World War II soldiers. And I never bought those either, but I read an article recently about them. Apparently, they're not really fancy. You'll be shocked to hear when you get 99 of them for $1.
I like this. Tim Comer, Nellie would be busy right now. I think Nellie would be busy right now. Nellie would be on the front lines doing what Nellie needs to do, and we'd be thanking her quite a bit as we are. I love Deborah's comment here. Deborah wants that dress.
There you go.
The Moon Glow dress.
Deborah, by the way, is my sister-in-law.
There you go.
Hi, Deborah. Good to see you. Yes, that is an awesome dress, isn't it, Deborah?
Yeah.
And for only $6.98, I can get you that dress. Let me write to the company and see if it's still available.
Hey, let's change gears a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about some artists and creators. I'm going to put up some folks here, Chris, and let's talk a little bit about these. Hang on, wrong one. Oh, you can tell.
There we go.
We're learning how to do some stuff here. These are some folks you've had folks who were scheduled for this past March, folks who will be scheduled for this August. And then just some good close friends of Planet Comicon here.
These are our creators who have been to Planet Comicon many times. We got Nick Gisba, and Nick is known for an artist known for dramatic fantasy landscape work and his sci-fi inspired spaceships.
It's awesome stuff. It's awesome stuff.
It's really interesting art. Brian Fife He's been a friend of the show for a long time. He's done a lot of our graphic design for the show.
Yeah.
And he does a lot of really amazing artwork.
Working with Disney, he's done some really cool things. Yeah.
And Megan Levins is
yeah.
a local creator. She had lived, I think she lived in Los Angeles and moved here a couple of years ago. And she has a lot of, she's working on a lot of published work right now. And she lives here in the Overland Park area.
Yeah.
And has been a supporter of the show. Ed Binkley and Ed LaValle have both been supporters of the show for many years. I'm talking way back to the early days of the show. I can't tell you how far back they go. I don't think right to the first show, but not too far off.
Yeah.
So they're both comic book creators that have published comics to their credit. But all of these people are going through a difficult time now. The exhibitors, the artists, everyone. So I'm sure they all have prints. Go to their website, see if there's something you like, see if there's something you enjoy, and and hopefully we can provide these folks with a little something to tide them over through this time.
Well, the other thing I know we're going to be doing here, we're going to have the opportunity to also to be doing some more streaming. So, I mean, obviously, this is just the first of many that we're going to be doing. So, the next one that we've got running here, it will be actually on Sunday. So we're really excited about that. We've got an upcoming live stream with this is going to be in conjunction with our good friends at US Toy Magic and Costume Shop and Dustin Evans Photography. Dustin is helping us out behind the scenes here today. As you can imagine, Chris and I need all the help we can get. So we're going to be doing some things on with cosplayer, a whole cosplayer maker series with US Toy. We're hopefully going to be bringing in some artists to do some live drawing and just kind of see what sort of, as I like to say, what sort of shenanigans we can get ourselves into with all of this stuff. So there was a question that I don't want it to go too far because I think it kind of goes into a little bit of what we want to talk about next, and again, also talking about creators and whatnot. Chris, you and I have talked about this a lot. A lot of the times that there's a lot of shows focus on cinema and TV, pop culture. Planet Comicon's a little different. Planet Comicon's known for being more of a comic book enthusiast show, but you still know, like you were just saying, from that first show, that you knew you had to kind of balance things out.
Yeah.
So to Kathleen's question, I like Kathleen's question. Who's your dream comic creator guest? And then my question after that one is, how do you balance these things out?
Okay, let's go through the dream comic creator guest. You'll be shocked to hear from someone that's a big Marvel fan from the 1960s and a Spider-Man fan since the early days of Spider-Man, that my dream guest was going to be Stan Lee. And from the first moment I had a convention, I knew I wanted Stan Lee as a guest. I was going to many conventions back in the late 90s, early 2000s, including San Diego many times. And I approached Stan Lee's agent, and I approached Stan Lee himself a couple of times, because in later years, it was much more difficult to get close to Stan. But back in the late 90s, early 2000s, I was at a dinner at San Diego. It was a comic book awards dinner, and he was at the next table. And during a break, I just went over and chatted with him about whether he'd be willing to come to the show. And I remember he was very enthusiastic about shows, but he said, Chris, I really have to charge now. And I'm really sorry to tell you that I would be $10,000 a day to come to your show. This was about 2002. Right. Later, when he finally came to my show, I would have, I'm like, we
won't talk about that.
We won't talk about the details, but let's just say it was, how do you say it? More. So, but I talked with Stan, or his agent virtually every year, trying to get him to come to the show, and they never had an interest. Planet Comicon's always been a little under the radar nationally as a show, or it had been. Lately, it's becoming more nationally known. But I don't think that they quite understood, he and his agent quite understood the potential of Planet. Now, I'm kind of glad they waited. But I worked every year. And finally, I had a show in 2015 in March, I think. And I actually found the original contract with Stan just the other day. Yeah. And it's dated just after the show. And I flew out to Los Angeles like 2 days after my show, or 3 days after my show in 2015, and met with Stan at his trailer on the set of a commercial they were filming. He and his agent were there. And I finally got Stan to sign on the dotted line. So it took, let's see, 15 years, 16 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I literally worked on him every year.
Yeah.
And I finally got him to the show because I wanted, and I knew that's somebody I knew the fans would want to meet.
Right.
He is a historic figure in comics. And I did not want to have a convention, go my entire convention career and not provide to my fans, the loyal people that attend Planet Comicon, the opportunity to meet one of the most well-known people in the history of comics.
Yeah.
So I'm very happy that I finally got him to the show. Not only did I get him to the show, he was there 3 days, all 3 days. He was 93 years old at the time, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And he worked and worked and worked.
Yeah.
It was just tremendous. He was a tremendous guest.
Now, I mean, and now I would argue that Stan is one of those folks who's sort of like, who kind of captured people's attentions on both sides. You didn't have to be a comic book enthusiast necessarily to be, to know that Stan the man, right?
Yes.
So how do you now, when you start to make maybe more insider choices with your comic creators, how do you balance that out with everything else? I mean, fandoms nowadays are tremendous. It's just all across the board. It seems like a lot of ground to cover in terms of trying to get guests.
It's always difficult to determine who you should invite as a guest.
Mm-hmm.
Part of it's going to be who I know, and part of it's going to be who I can get in touch with. But I will say I've been very fortunate over the years to meet so many different people in the industry. And then to have people on my staff, like Phil Lawrence, who's my assistant convention director, who's been involved in comics since, Phil's first job in comics was working as my assistant at my booth at the Los Angeles Comic Book and Science Fiction Convention, a monthly show in LA in 1988, 89. He helped me at my booth. But he's known people in comics for 20 years as well.
I'm gonna have to ask Phil some stories about that time now.
Now
that I know that.
Phil has a lot of stories.
We'll have to have Phil on this. We'll have to do that.
Yeah, we'll have Phil on sometime. That'd be good. But between myself, Phil, some other members of my staff, and people they know, we have communication with almost everybody. Almost.
Yeah.
And we've been very fortunate that most people we invite are interested to attend the show if they have time and if they're available. That's one of the toughest things in this business.
Yeah.
Creators can only take so much time off of work to go to shows.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it's a difficult thing. Many conventions have gone the celebrity route because attendance can be celebrity driven.
Mm-hmm.
The general public is more likely to attend a show because they see that someone they've seen on television or in film is going to be there.
Yeah.
Only a small percentage of the population are really comic book collectors.
Mm-hmm.
Now I do focus on them, and that's a big part of my show, but I also know I need to get the general public in the door.
Yeah.
So I invite a lot of celebrities, but I always invite many comic creators as well. Yeah. And then when I bring people to the show, much like milk at a grocery store, I put the celebrities clear at the back. And I make sure that all the fans have to walk through the entire show in order to find the celebrities. And I'm always hoping that during that time, those people that come in just for celebrities, they'll walk by an exhibitor. They'll see something interesting at a retailer. They'll see a piece of art on a wall. Right. They'll see a creator that's got a sign up that they created the comic that celebrity, was in the show. And they'll stop and they'll start getting interested in comic books.
Yeah.
They'll start getting interested in other aspects of the genre. That's always very important. I also bring people in right into the cosplay area because cosplay is very visual. Mm-hmm. And when fans come in, I like them to see a lot of grandeur, a lot of interesting sights. People love to take pictures of cosplayers and have their pictures taken with cosplayers.
Right.
So I love having all those aspects of the show right there. And having people walk through that entire show and seeing all those aspects in order to eventually find Lou Ferrigno back in the celebrity area. So
there's a joke about Lou Ferrigno in the green room. I'm sure there's a joke there somewhere.
I haven't had one of those lately. So
hey, while we're talking about some of those folks that I love that description of putting the milk in the back and making people kind of walk through and discover new things. Here's some folks that we want to kind of give some shout outs to today. I was kind of looking through some of these websites. These guys do some amazing stuff, looking at some of the artwork and books and stuff that Deeply Dapper puts out there. Some of the leatherwork Brass Engine Creations does. The Whimsy Cellar, I love just for the name alone, because that's kind of what I want to That's what I want to rename my office right now. Is the Whimsy Cellar. But they've got some really cool sort of home decoration stuff. Dragon's Knoll, our good friends at Gyps and Wands, who I drop money there every year at Gyps and Wands because they're all Harry Potter enthusiasts. So it's tough, Chris. I got a Harry Potter family. That's the fandom that my whole family shares right there. So it can get to be a little dangerous for us.
Well, I've been lucky enough to bring out some guests that kind of meet that criteria. Then
it's been kind of fun to watch that. Yeah. Hey, there's a question here. I like. There's another one that I like that was really kind of interesting. I'm gonna have to go back and see if I can trace it back. Jennifer Dawn, how has it felt to see Planet Comicon grow so much over the years?
Wow, it is surprising. It is gratifying. I'm obviously pleased. Planet Comicon grew relatively slowly in the suburbs from 1999 till 2012. It did grow. We moved into a 50,000 square foot room at the Overland Park International Trade Center, and we slowly filled it. I remember the first few years in that room, we'd have pipe and drape across part of the room, cutting it off because we couldn't fill that gigantic 50,000 square feet. So then by 2010 or 11, we filled it. 2011 was busy. 2012, we were packed. I mean, it was so hard to move in there. I guarantee we were violating some ordinances.
50,000 square feet.
50,000 square feet.
I want to make sure people keep that number.
50,000 square feet.
Keep that in your head.
So I should have moved earlier, but it's that year that I decided this is getting too big. We have to move down to Bartle Hall. Mm-hmm. So I moved down to Bartle Hall, and Bartle Hall is the exhibit hall. It's called Bartle Hall. The convention center is the Kansas City Convention Center. Bartle Hall itself is 400,000 square feet. Mm-hmm. The first year I moved into a room that was 100,000. So I went from 50,000 to 100,000 from 2012 to
doubled it. Jeez.
And I thought initially that I'd have to put some pipe and drape across that room, but it became quickly apparent we were going to fill it, and we did. The second year I added another room, Hall E, and it ended up around 200,000 square feet the second year, and we filled it. The third year I started moving north, added Hall C, then B, then A, right. And in 5 years I filled it, taking up one more hall each year. And now we've taken up all the space there is. It's packed. We try to condense things down as much as we can. There's no more space to take in terms of exhibit hall. And one of my theories, by the way, of a convention is I like all the main aspects under one roof. I like to have the exhibitors in the same room as the creators, in the same room as the cosplay, in the same room as the celebrities. And then you create a traffic flow with long open aisles, and you get everybody everywhere. So I don't want to take any aspect of the show and say, move all the creators over to the ballroom. I want them all under the same roof so that everybody sees them. But it's been very gratifying to see it grow, and it grew exponentially. We were fortunate, though. John was talking about earlier, we were talking earlier about how the Marvel movies that started, I believe, in 2008, changed the course of comic shows.
I think 2004 was the first Iron Man or something like that.
I don't know. I think I was saying 2008, but I could be wrong.
Here's what I know. Somebody in the comments will correct us if we get it wrong.
I think it was 2008. But what happened was, at that point in time, shows started to grow. I could even tell my show in the suburbs was growing. And I consider myself very fortunate that at the time comic shows were taking off. It was like a curve. It was going, and then it just went like this. Yeah. And it just shot up. And I was fortunate enough to own a moderately successful comic book show in the suburbs, comic book and pop culture show at the time when comic shows were starting to skyrocket in popularity. Mm-hmm. And then when I moved it down to Bartle Hall and had all that additional room, 2012, 13, 14, it just grew exponentially. I mean, that was very gratifying.
Did it freak you out? I mean, let's just talk about the crowds. I mean, let's just talk about that many people. And I mean, which is, kind of a strange thing to be thinking about these days. But I mean, at that time, that first year.
The first year was really kind of interesting. I didn't know what to expect. I thought sales had been pretty good. We were using a sales platform that I was monitoring closely, and that was all nice.
David Sullivan, by the way, says 2008. He was graduating high school when Iron Man.
There you go. I thought it was 2008, but I wasn't entirely sure. And I by the way, I like his mask there, his face covering.
Yeah.
So I remember going down to the show that first year at Bartle Hall, and Aramark is the food concessionaire there. They control all the food in the room.
Right.
Many people might not realize there are people that control things. I can't just invite a vendor in to sell food. Aramark controls that. So I was there in the hall probably not too long after the show opened, and the gentleman who was the director of Aramark at Bartle Hall came up to me and he said, Chris, he said, we had no idea what to expect. We didn't realize what a comic show was. He said, I was driving up, and he's told me the story many times since.
Uh-huh.
I was driving up to the convention center on Saturday morning, because we were 2-day show then, Saturday, Sunday. I was driving up to the convention center, and the line was wrapped around the building. And he said, I thought to myself, we're not prepared. I need to get in there and open up some more food stands.
That's in Jaws. In Jaws, that's the line. We're going to need a bigger boat.
We're going to need a bigger boat. But I kind of ran into that a bit when I was first dealing with the folks down at Bartle Hall. All very nice people, but they didn't understand a comic show.
Sure.
I thought they thought it was going to be, kind of a bunch of geeks. Maybe their T-shirt didn't quite fit and their belly hanging out. And they were, there were going to be a few of them come down there and they're going to buy some comic books. They had no idea what to expect. Nobody had investigated at all what my show was. And at that point, it was smaller. But still, the line was around the block. And that was a challenge getting people in the door. That was a challenge we dealt with every year. Mm-hmm. One of the biggest challenges in the first few years down there was we grew the show each year. So we had to redo the map each year. And map making was truly a challenge. The hardest part of all. Phil and I pore over maps all the time.
Right.
And William Bindrup. I started the show with William back in 1999. And early on, we were so good at our job that the shows were not very successful. Mm-hmm. So William needed to go back to running his store rather than running a con, because some people have to feed their family, unlike me. So then I took over the show fairly early on. I forget exactly what I could go find out. And so we were really new to this, and I am losing track. So
it's okay. I mean, we're going to talk a little bit more about William here in a second. I love it. Brian Alderson also appropriately masked. It says that line was awesome.
Yes. For those of you who remember that, I truly wish somebody had a drone back then, and we could have filmed the lines over the years.
Yeah.
I'd love to have a drone in the building, but they're banned, so I can't have a drone to take pictures in the building.
We do get those big scissor lift pictures every once in a while.
Yes,
we try to get some of those cool things out there to do all this stuff. So let's talk a little bit about William here. This is a good opportunity to talk about William and talk about a little bit about our friends at Elite Comics, because there's a special relationship here with William and Elite and Planet Comicon Kansas City.
William has been a tremendous help over the years. Obviously, he founded the show with me and has been a big supporter of the show all through the years. I truly appreciate his friendship and his assistance and just everything about William. He is such a giving person. Yeah. He spends a lot of his time and energy just raising money for various charitable foundations around the city, particularly Children's Mercy Hospital.
I saw this great picture of him and his team, and it was after one of their toy drives, and they had gone to Target. So they had all the donations they had of toys and then money, and then they go to Target to buy those toys. And I saw the receipt for it, and it was like, like there were it was like 5 or 6 people, holding that receipt up. It was that long.
Yes,
it was so cool.
Fun. It was fun. I was there that night, actually, for that picture. So, although I'm sure he's done one every year.
Yeah.
So.
Well, no, and so William and you, and I think we're going to talk a little bit more about this, because we do have some other really cool programming opportunities that I think we're going to probably bring William into a future conversation here, a Q&A. Yeah. And because really what I want to do is I want to fact check all your stories about the early days against what William says.
I have the real story. William is fake news. So, but by the way, I wanted to make one comment about all that. There are many local stores that have supported me virtually since the beginning. I remember in the early days, I did virtually everything myself. Andy Parks, local creator, helped me design flyers. I would drive them to the stores. I'd tape them in windows. I'd pin them to the bulletin board in coffee shops. I did it all myself in some of those early days. But I'd drive them around to the stores. And virtually every store in town supported me. And I appreciate that so much. We are putting together a list of all the local stores and we're going to get it on the website soon. It'll be, I think, on a crawl on the right side of the website, but we'll have a page for it. And I really would urge anyone that's got an interest in any of these fandoms to contact their store, whatever store they've used in the past, whatever store they want to support, and try to find out how to support that store during this downtime.
Absolutely.
I know William is doing a lot of mail order. I don't know exactly how he's taking orders, but you can find out by calling his store. So,
yeah.
But we'll also highlight all the other stores: Bebop Comics and Pop Culture Comics and A to Z Comics and Clint's Comics. All of them. We'll be focusing on all of them.
Yeah, it's it's a tough time for everybody, and I think it's, again, if there's love that can be spread, if there's things that we can do, if there's because we're going to be looking for interesting stuff, and we're going to be looking for I don't know, just to have conversations around everything that Planet Comicon is. It's kind of overwhelming because Planet Comicon has grown to be so many different things. I mean, you talk about, especially the last few years. I mean, we haven't even touched on gaming, and I'm talking about just tabletop gaming, things along those lines. We haven't even touched on esports stuff that you guys are starting to get into now, which is really incredible to watch. And that brings a whole other audience into the room, and introduces, like you said, kind of introduces them to all these other, rich sort of fandoms and an art and things that we all appreciate. So it's going to be it's going to be a fun time doing these live streams with you, Chris, and getting stuff going. We're taking questions. So if you guys want to throw some questions into the comments and stuff like that, every once in a while, we're trying to look over there and try to keep an eye on what you guys are all saying. And it looks like you guys are having a good time too.
Well, while we're at it, I know when we put up the slide for exhibitors or for artists, I was going to show you a piece of art.
Oh yeah,
that I bought from one of the Planet exhibitors. I bought this years ago at Spectrum Fantastic Art Live.
Yes.
Show, but this is a painting by Camilla D'Erico, and she does amazing work. She's got a very unique style.
Yes.
And she's done a lot of different kind of series over the years of paintings. Mm-hmm. This is an original painting that I picked up from her several years ago, but she's a guest at the show as well. She's got a website. She has prints and purses and plushies and everything else with her type of characters. So I'd urge you to go, if you enjoy, if you think this looks pretty, and I do, go to Camilla D'Erico's site and see if you can find something you like from her.
She was pretty awesome. I remember last year she was set up right underneath the large, the big screen that we had set up in the middle of the room last year, right next to the Planet Comicon merch booth. And I remember seeing her being very busy all weekend long, and always with a smile on her face too. That's the other thing about it. She would talk to people. I mean, that's the other great thing about Planet Comicon is that you bring the fans right to the artists. You bring them right to the celebrities, and you give them that eyeball to eyeball experience. That's really like nothing else. It's a really cool thing.
That's one of the points of the entire event, is to allow the fans to meet the people who create the work they love. So whether it be a television show, a movie, a comic book, their art prints, whatever it be, put them face to face. Yeah.
So here's another one. This is going to kind of thinking about it. So we're living in a sort of a virtual Comic-Con world right now. If all your dreams came true, Christopher Jackson, what would be the perfect Planet Comicon experience?
Wow. Do you want me to tell it from the perspective of the fan or the promoter?
Let's start with the fan, because I think your perspective as a fan, because you go to a lot of shows every year.
I do.
And you go into those shows with, I know you're wearing your promoter hat. Yes. But you go in those shows to be a fan first and to experience.
Oh, I shop at every show I go to. I don't think I've ever left a show without buying a few comic books.
Yeah.
So, gosh, the fan experience. I enjoy the panels with the creators.
Yeah.
So I want to see a nice menu of creator panels to go to, and celebrity panels. I enjoy those as well. And I want to see some gold and silver age comic book dealers I can shop with. I love digging through the boxes. I may not even find very much, but I love digging through the boxes and see what's there. And occasionally I'll find a book I never saw in my life. And that's getting more and more unusual though. So, but that's my Comic-Con experience.
Yeah.
So
Now flip the table. Now for you as the person behind the curtain who gets to create the experience, stretch the canvas, what are you looking to do?
Well, I'm trying to provide a venue for people to meet their creators. So if things go well, I want things to go smoothly. I don't want there to be glitches. I want people to get in the door easily. I don't want to be long, an hour or 2 hour wait out front. We generally can keep it below that, but I've seen many shows. Star Wars Celebration a couple years ago was 2 or 3 or 4 hours to get in the door.
Wow.
I want to keep the experience friendly for the fan as much as possible, to the extent possible.
Yeah.
So that is my goal, is to make it go smoothly. And to achieve that goal, the staff has gotten larger and larger over the years, and they work hard. And we have an amazing staff who, including my main staff, Stacy Bartlett, Jim Bartlett, Phil Lawrence, John Kreikbergs, Kelly Mastromoro, Tracy Jackson, my
David
sister-in-law,
Nieves,
David Nieves, my programming manager, can take our list of guests. He's I said, David, who do you want us to get? Just tell me who you're going to get, Chris, and I'll create programming around it. And he does an amazing job. Not to mention, Dave knows practically everybody in the business. That doesn't hurt either. He's another one. Our staff is so incredible, and it is so much work to get the show going. I remember the days back at the Trade Center where 10 days before the show, I'd frantically call around and I try to get hold of a few of the volunteers that were helping me. Scott and Erica Livingston, before they were married, were some of my loyal volunteers early on. Scott Spilkey, I'd call them like 10 days before the show. Can you help me? Oh my gosh, the show's close. And it was very awkward. I was not very good about getting things organized back then, but luckily it didn't take as many people. Now my brother-in-law always came down and took the money at the door. My sister came down. My other brothers and their wives would come down occasionally to help. And now Tracy Jackson, my sister-in-law, is instrumental in a lot of the behind-the-scenes work and runs the front desk every time. So it's been a family-run operation much of the time.
Well, I've been involved with Planet Comicon for about 4 or 5 years now, just kind of in different capacities. And I think that's the thing I've always enjoyed about it, that it felt it had very much as a family atmosphere. And I think that's really, really cool. Here's a good one. I really think this is a great question. I think David Sullivan is here to stump you tonight. What's the one big piece of advice you'd give your past self about running a con? Wow.
Let me think about that a little bit.
So this is 20th anniversary, Christopher Jackson talking to, hey, I think I want to do this, and I'm going to call Kenny Baker.
I would organize better early on. There are things that I failed to do at those first shows until late, and it got almost too late to do them at times. So I would try to plan better. That's gosh, because to me the important part is running the show smoothly. So it's that planning part that I fell apart on. I would try to have my show when it's not snowing like crazy, because you can plan that, right? I don't know how many people are aware, but my show in 2007, I think, at the Trade Center, and some of you people in comments can say which year it was, maybe. But we had as the show approached, as Saturday approached, there was a storm coming to town, and then on Friday during setup, the scheduled time, we were supposed to be getting a blizzard starting at 9 a.m. on Saturday morning. So I was in despair. Now, on Saturday morning, it was drizzling, but wasn't bad. Started raining harder as it approached noon. By 1 o'clock, it started snowing. By 2 o'clock, you couldn't have left there if you wanted to. But it was great because everybody was trapped. We didn't sell a ticket after 1 o'clock, I don't think. But there was a huge crowd in the room, and nobody left. They all stayed. And it was an amazing show. But had that storm happened 5 hours earlier, I don't know if we'd be having Planet Comicon today, because I would have gone broke right then. So
here's a random one. I don't know who this person is at all. Of all the people who have ever helped you at a con, who would you say is your favorite?
Helped me at a con? Helped me?
Yeah.
This is going to be an easy one. Many of you may know my girlfriend, Sydney Ward. So she better be my favorite person at a con, because I'm in quarantine right now. And
see, this is what's going to happen. And then this is, she's somewhere else in the house. She's thinking of these things. So this is gonna be the game inside the game. Chris.
Wait a minute. That was her asking the question. I just now saw that.
Oh, wait a minute.
Oh my God, Sydney, you're net. Hey, I didn't even see your name there and thought of it.
Oh, I was leading you. I
didn't even see that name there. Yes, Sydney, it's you. I was smart enough to pick your name, even though I didn't see it. Thank you, sweetie.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, that's enough mushy stuff for this show.
So I know. I'm sorry. I couldn't. No, resist.
That's all right.
I couldn't resist. So what else do you got behind you? You've got boxes of cool things.
Let's see what we got here.
You turn into a direction. Sydney, by the way, I like this. Sydney says that was the right answer. There you go.
Here we go. I'm going to show you. Well, one, I picked this one up. You haven't seen this one yet. She-Hulk #1. Now, this is from the 1980. This is not one of my original collection books. But I did buy this originally off the stands, and I have an entire run of She-Hulk that I did buy off the stands.
So that's #1?
That's #1 of She-Hulk. Came out around 1981. Not terribly valuable.
But it's an awesome cover. I love that cover.
Yes, it's a great cover. It was in $1 to $5 boxes for years and years. And now it's, I don't know, a couple $100 book in really high grade. This is not a high grade copy. Yeah. But the significance of this is I understand it's the last original character that Stan Lee created. So I'm told.
Interesting. Yeah.
And so he co-created it with someone else. I forget. I'd have to look at the credits, and I'm busy holding it up. Well, so it's a fun book.
And She-Hulk's going to be is going to be kind of top of mind again, coming out with I believe that new animated series that's going to be that's coming out there.
She's very popular. She's a very popular character. So, and you were asking about storylines that are popular.
Yeah, or storylines that you like.
Okay, well, let me go through some of the top storylines in Marvel Comics, because that's what I'm most familiar with now. I have some knowledge of some of the other series, but
educate me. Just drop it on me.
Stan Lee often said that his favorite series was the origin of Silver Surfer and the first appearance of Galactus the first appearance of Silver Surfer, first appearance of Galactus, the Fantastic Four, 48, 9, and 50. And I don't have those available right here to show you covers. And Stan Lee also was involved with all the original, like Dr. Octopus appearances of Spider-Man. And I consider some of the greatest storylines Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man 31, 2, and 3, which had the Master Planner, who was revealed, hate to be a spoiler 50 years later. Is it too soon?
I think we can let it go. We can let it go.
The Master Planner is Dr. Octopus.
What?
Yes. What? Who knew? And so it's not too early for a spoiler on that. But then the Dr. Octopus storylines were really tremendous back then.
Yeah.
And in Spider-Man 53, 4, 5, and 6, Amazing Spider-Man, there was another Dr. Octopus storyline.
There you go.
And these are my original copies that I bought off the stands, much like the number 50.
12 cents.
Yeah,
12 cents,
12
right?
cent cover price.
Oh my gosh.
And these are both signed by both John Romita and Stan Lee. I got those signed not too long ago.
Have you ever been nervous meeting some of these comic creators that you grew up reading? Have you ever been nervous about it?
Gosh, I don't really think so. I mean, I was a little hesitant to approach Stan at that dinner that day.
Sure.
But I did.
Yeah.
He was actually there with, gosh, my mind's drawing a blank. The major editor of DC Comics back then was sitting at that table too. Mm-hmm. My mind's drawing a blank. I'm really embarrassed.
John Romita?
No.
Somebody's trying to.
So here's number 54. Yeah. That's the second part of that Dr. Octopus story. This is from like 1967 or 8. Number 55, all signed by John Romita.
I love that one with the reflection of
in
Spider-Man.
The glasses.
Hang on, let me zoom in on that. I got to zoom in on that one a little bit.
There you go.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, that looks better.
Yeah, that's cool.
When you're doing that. Yeah, that looks better.
That's cool.
And then we've got the last part of that.
Yeah.
So these are all my own collection.
Signed by John, signed by Stan.
Signed by John, signed by Stan. And I was always a big X-Men fan as well. And here's the first appearance of the Juggernaut in X-Men number 12. This is not signed, I don't think. Is it signed?
Yeah.
No, it's not signed. That's all right. That's part 1, and then it was a 2-parter. And boy, back then, if you had a 2-part story, you were really on pins and needles for when the next one was going to come out, and whether you could find it. Because I was riding my bicycle up to a drugstore with a friend of mine to buy these things for 12 cents off the stands. So those are some of my favorite books right there. We got a couple more X-Men, which these are parts 2 and 3 of the first Sentinel story, They were in X-Men 14, 15, and 16, right after that Juggernaut story. So here's one of the early Daredevils, one of my favorite early Daredevil books, Daredevil number 16, had a 2-part Spider-Man Daredevil story.
God.
And then, I love some of these kind of.
So you have a few comic books out there. You have a few.
Oh yeah, I got a few. I got a couple. And there's some titles I love that are just not that popular. Things like I showed you this one, Not Brandak. It's kind of a parody. It's almost like a Mad Magazine type thing.
I
love these books.
And I've seen one. I think I've actually seen that one before. And I remember reading that as a kid and being so confused.
So I love this book. I think the splash page of this book is just awesome. Of the what is it? The Silver Burper story. Just the splash page is just amazing. With one of Mr. Fantastic. What his name? Whatever his name is.
Kenneth Kelcher's. Kenneth is going. He's got some of those too. Yeah.
And you can see his. If you ever read Fantastic Four, Mr. Fantastic was always coming up with some amazing invention that would allow them to do spectacular things that were absolutely impossible. But in the Silver Burper story, his little invention is not coming across so well, as you can see.
Not so great.
Not so great. That things weren't going as well.
Hey, here's a good one. Here's a good question for you. So, Sam Kimmy, do you have any favorite new artists in maybe the last few decades? Like, so you got your classic stuff, and you love the classic stuff. But I know you have an eye for some of the new art that's out there too.
Okay, I'm a huge fan of Scotty Young's art.
Yeah,
and I'm very fortunate in that Scotty Young is now a local creator. He's moved to Overland Park, lives not very far from where I live, and he's responsible for all the Baby Marvels covers, things like that.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think. There's lots of great artists that have come out in the last few years. Garth
Ennis is going to be joining us in August.
Yeah.
So we're talking, talk about somebody who's very contemporary right now, very top of mind, with the crossover into live action.
So I'm just drawing a blank right here.
I know
there's dozens of artists that I really love their work.
That's a good question. That was a good one, Sam. So here's the funny thing about this.
Stefan Roux is another one that I really like his art a lot.
Okay.
Stefan Roux.
Yeah.
But there's so many. I'm going to insult somebody by leaving them out. So if I start a list, I don't really want to start because I'll insult somebody by not mentioning their name. So a lot of them are local here, by the way.
Yeah. Here's a good one. Bonnie Elfie, as a comic book fan and a Spider-Man fan, did you see the Into the Spider-Verse movie? What did you think about it?
I did see the Into the Spider-Verse movie. I thought it was incredibly creative. I loved it. I love the way they brought Spider-Gwen into it.
Yeah.
Kind of the first appearance of Spider-Gwen. Jason Latour, there's another artist. I love his work.
There you go.
One of the creators of that. And Robbie Rodriguez, who they created Spider-Gwen together. I thought it was incredibly creative. I talked to people who say, well, it was kind of out of focus when I was watching it. No, that was how they intended the film. And I loved that film. I thought it was tremendous.
Yeah.
So I thought it was one of the better Marvel films. There are some of the Marvel films, some of the Spider-Man films that I was a little iffy on, to be honest.
I think you earlier when you were showing me some stuff that you had with you, I think there was a Peter Porker in there somewhere.
Oh, I don't know if I've got that real handy right now. Peter Porker, the Spectacular Spider-Ham.
Right.
Let's see if we can find Peter Porker here somewhere. Let's see if I can find Peter Porker.
Hey, just while you're doing a little bit of hunting around there, I just want to remind folks here that as we're getting close to wrapping up our very first Planet Comicon Kansas City live stream, PCKC TV, we're going to be doing more of these. So coming up this Sunday at 2:00, our good friends at US Toy Magic and Costume Shop and Dustin Evans Photography as a producer, they're going to have a cosplay crafter series. Start with a good virtual tour of the Hammerspace workshop. Hammerspace is always involved with Planet Comicon Kansas City. There's a lot of folks that are good friends. They help out in our Planet Entertainment Zone every year, and just good friends of the show. And so they're going to have a really cool live stream, and that's going to be hosted by Mark Argenbright with US Toy. And join us at 2:00 on Sunday because it's going to be a lot of fun and it's going to be something different. But bring the kids along too because we're going to be talking about some really cool technology and opportunities for makers. And I'm hoping that they're also going to talk a little bit about some of the things they're doing around Kansas City right now, because there's some really cool homebrewed efforts that are actually helping out medical professionals on the front lines. So, Chris, did you find it?
I did not find Peter Porker.
Right
I'm
on.
sorry. I'll bring that up next time.
We'll do that next time.
Porker, the spectacular spider hand.
I can't wait to see some of these other things that you've got coming, coming
So,
around.
well, I'll tell you. Let me. We can run a little bit long here.
Yeah.
I picked up some Golden Age books. I've never been a huge collector of Golden Age, but they're very interesting, and I think people enjoy seeing them. So I want to show a few books here, if I could.
Yeah.
Can we go to that full screen where I can show books a little bit better?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I picked up some early Batman appearances in Detective. This is Detective number 87. Let's find out what the date of that is. This is a book that when I picked it up, I had never seen this cover before. And that's not something that's real usual. May 1944 cover date.
Nice.
So it's a penguin appearance, obviously. But I thought that was a really interesting cover, the way they have the penguins on there, all the penguins.
Yeah.
I like that. There are actually 2 copies of that in the collection I bought. That was kind of weird. A book like that would just have 2 copies. Flash Comics.
Mm-hmm.
Again, this is all 1942 to 47 cover dates thing.
I love
this
the art.
is a fairly rare detective comic. It's I think the only Scarecrow cover from the Golden Age.
So one of the
second
cool
appearance of Scarecrow.
I love that, and it's very different in how Scarecrow is depicted now. So one of the things that going to be happening, and we're going to be debuting another show next week. You and William are going to be team. I love that. Look at that.
Yes.
Classic.
There's a patriotic Superman cover, number 24. Again, let's see. It says there's a card in the back of it. 1943.
Yep.
So these are a lot of fun books.
So next Wednesday, let me just keep putting them up. I'm going to talk over you a little bit. I love that.
Go ahead.
So next Wednesday, we're going to be have another show here. We're going to be doing a Talking Comics show with William Binderup from Elite Comics, who will be joining you. I think we're going to get even more geeky with the comic stuff. I love that. That's a psychedelic one.
Yes, that's a really great. Action Comics number 89. For those who don't know, Superman first appeared in Action Comics.
Nice. And then next week, also I think Thursday, classic Wonder Woman. Next Thursday, we'll also have you back, Chris. And who knows, we might have some other guests joining us along the way here, too.
Yeah, that'd be great. Here's the last one I'm going to show you for the moment. But it's one of my more rare comic books that I've picked up. And it's an old Alex Schomburg cover, All Select number 1.
Yeah.
That's actually a very scarce book. So
yeah,
I really love the Human Torch, Captain America kind of cover. And if you can look closely, this is from the war years. And they are attacking Berchtesgaden, Hitler's sanctuary up in the Alps.
Wow.
Or wherever it was.
Yeah.
In Austria.
You got the Submariner down there. Man, that's awesome.
That's a classic book right there.
I dig it. I dig it.
On the other hand, I can't pick up and read this. I'm going to carefully put it away and not touch it. But whereas I can take She-Hulk out and read it.
Yeah. Yeah, so, different sort of a deal.
Yes.
Different sort of a deal. Well, Chris, hey, thanks for doing this one, for kind of helping us kind of get things started off with the Planet Comicon TV. Like I said, we got the next show coming up on Sunday. We've got another show, Talking Comics, with William Binderup from Elite Comics on Wednesday. We're going to have all sorts of great stuff going on here. So it's going to be a lot of fun. So before we go, though, I want to make sure that we thank a few people. So Chris, thanks for doing this. Dustin Evans for being behind the scenes, helping us look through some of those comments and getting some of those great questions bubbled up to the top. So because we want to get you all involved in this as well. And of course, a big thank you to our Planet Comicon Kansas City sponsors who have been with us through this year, and it's these interesting times. So it's great to have them on board and still supporting us and really kind of helping us get through a lot of these different things too. So we're all trying to figure out new ways of bringing some of this fun to you, to your home. So the live stream is something that we can do. Christopher Jackson, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you for moderating the program, John. Much appreciated. Thank you, Dustin, for working behind the scenes to make sure it all goes smoothly.
Dustin in his secret undisclosed location somewhere deep beneath a volcano.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's his basement, just like mine is my basement. So
no, I like to call it a volcano. This is the
volcano's bunker. Better. Yes, the volcano is much better.
All right. Well, I'm going to take it out with a little bit of fun and maybe just a little bit of look of Planet Comicon Kansas City in the past. And we will see you again on Sunday.
Thank you.
Sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. We have a liftoff. Liftoff on Apollo 11.